Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing up. Yep, looked like my microphone was on, but the cable didn't come out. Well, that was interesting, since I got to do my preamble and nobody heard it. All right, well, let's forget the preamble. We're talking about today. We're going to talk about Project Power and the concept of it. I did not see the show, so I really actually can't even spoil it, even if I wanted to spoil it. Thanks, Cam. And the idea is to give everyone a pill gives everyone who takes it 5 minutes of power, and what you can or cannot do with those 5 minutes, and where, the idea of giving your average citizen basically great power in a very small package. Now, fantasy role-playing games tend to relate to magic rather than science, and fantasy, more fantasy in ancient cultures rather than modern day. But the concept still applies, where there's a great power out there that the nobility or society or governments or factions cannot control, no matter how much they try to. And yesterday we kind of hinted about player characters maybe being in the midst of that, somehow both not desiring to be part of the controlling faction, yet at the same time being in danger of the people who have access to this commodity. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be a drug, although in the television show, the Netflix television show, it is a drug. It is a drug that's sold on the streets, and there's a whole culture built around it. And I'm imagining a world where we can take that subject and, extrapolate on it. Where is this power coming from? Yesterday, the suggestion was that a fallen or captured Cam was like, rage is definitely a short-term superpower. To some people, yes, or at least they like to use it as a weapon, right? And for sure, even if someone had great power for like 5 minutes, right? I can pretty much guarantee you that more often than not, you'll come up probably with more criminal activities to perform, or at least extraordinary activities to do, which may not necessarily benefit humanity, versus becoming like some kind of hero or to stop evil or something of that nature, right? Because one of the issues with having great power for a very short amount of time is that, of course, you have a very short amount of time to do anything with it. Now, as hinted upon in the television movie, or the streaming movie on Netflix, is that there are people who have become addicted to gaining that power, and it seems as if you don't know what power you're going to get, but whenever you take this drug or you possess this power, that you maintain the same power each time, right? And it's possible that either each power just becomes random, or it could be that each person ends up like, hey, every time I possess this power for a very short amount of time, I'm completely invulnerable, or I turn invisible, or I get super strength or something. Now, of course, we're talking about superpowers, and some people might be thinking like, well, I only play Dungeons and Dragons. What does superpowers have to do with that? Well, let's be honest, most magical abilities in Dungeons and Dragons tend to default to some form of superpower. You may not call it that, but the ability to blast things or fly through the air or become invisible or heal wounds or turn, all of that thing, read minds and whatnot, they pretty much fall in line with superpowers, minus the extraordinary origin and, headquarters and spandex, right? So, but we don't even have to yeah, like your all DM says, D&D characters are superheroes for sure, especially modern D&D characters. Yes, they can survive great heights and terrible amounts of harm and walk away unscathed with nothing but a a nap, or maybe even a nice drink and a small pastry or something. Pretty much works that way, right? So the I think from what I understand, yeah. Cam's like, never skip on a spandex. You never do. Yeah, that's the greatest byproduct of superpowers is all the people running around in the spandex. The tighter, the better. Anyway, the I think some things, mind you, like I said, I didn't actually see Project Power, and from all regards, it seems like they kind of dropped the ball a little bit. But I like the idea of average citizens having great power, even for a short time, because there's so much you can do with it. For example, how many dangers would there be in front of the player characters? You know, you offend the wrong person, and you don't know if they might turn into, I don't know, a 13 CR pit fiend right in front of you or something like that. If there's some physical changes, or um, maybe in a town there are those who have become addicted to this power source, and they've become so addicted that they are no longer, their minds are no longer in the physical realm or something. Their minds have started to drift off into the ethereal or the astral realms or whatnot, or maybe they become um, more mutated than human, even in their physical forms and whatnot, or their ability to control whatever they can do becomes less and less, or maybe they become more powerful the more they become addicted to this power source. And then who controls that power source? Where does it come from? Is it something created by herbalists or an apothecary or something, or is this a fount of magic that uh, a few have been able to find, maybe based on astrological events or something hidden out into the great wild? Maybe brought up yesterday. Maybe there's a fey creature, or even a fey village or something that thinks it's funny during this period of time that they hand out these little pocket wishes that people can put in their back pocket. And like I said, it doesn't necessarily need to be something consumed. It could be a lucky coin, or calling forth a name of a powerful um, personage or something, like, you know, a powerful being or celestial or fiendish creature or something in between that comes before you and stops time and grants you this one last gift. It could be an old hag out in the woods, where you go to her for some kind of concoction and wishes something. So yeah, I can imagine there's a number of origins you could do. And I think playing with the fear of the breakdown of the status quo really matters. There might be plenty of nobility that will want to see an end to this completely. There might be others that will want to harness those that are able to find this material or use it for themselves, or even shape a religion around it. You know, spraying the chrome into the mouth and jumping from rusted automobile to rusted automobile. You know, it's the I'm going to convince everyone that they're going to go to Valhalla if you just take this concoction or something for the betterment of mankind, which might just be in service to my own ego or something. You know, I mean, it could be something like that. So, and any and all of that might be true all at the same time, especially if competing factions who can grant people power for short amount of times are using it to confront other people who have the same exact thing. And then, of course, there's all of the vandalism that comes about from preventing people from acquiring these powers for short amount of times, and the inexperience people have with it as well. Uh, Cameron says, I could see alchemists getting addicted to their own potions, or a whole college of them hooked on various substances. Potion, like, could you imagine potion addiction just running rampant and whatnot? Maybe there's maybe the maybe the thing that people are trying to break is the fact that potions are temporary in the first place. And so it is this ultimate, like, if the first person to get to the point where you could drink a potion of fire breathing and then be able to breathe fire permanently might um, be a king, or they might be kidnapped and held in a basement somewhere, to ensure that their own faction is the only one able to get these longer lasting or even permanent potions, or the number of mistakes that have happened from the permanency guild or something. Yeah, it could be even something like that. Deadman says Misfits is an excellent superpower series on Hulu. Nathan Young, played by Robert Sheehan, is the best of the original characters. Misfits, I remember. I remember a BBC version of it and an Americanized version of it. Misfits. Yep. Your LDM says those in power want to keep power. If somehow these abilities become available to everyone, those in charge would be very afraid. Oh, hells yes. This is where, like, physical crackdowns probably would never work. As a matter of fact, it would probably make it worse if you start cracking heads. So probably they would need to have some kind of like those in power would need to have infiltrators, while at the same time maybe spreading propaganda about how dangerous it is, or how your everlasting soul might be corrupted by it. And at the same time, those in power might want to recruit or possess, or destroy this or all of those above. They might want to destroy that access to that power, and even then, destroying access to that power might not be smart anyway, when the public is like, look, all we want to do is just have some fun. And the people in power are like, yeah, but it only takes one of you guys and it takes 5 minutes, right? Now, I don't know about the 5 minute thing. Like, I don't, potions last however long they last. The point is that the power is temporary. And that power could be anything from, like I said, it could be one special ability, like I can turn invisible or read minds, or become totally invulnerable or something. Or it could be like a transformative thing, like, oh, if I drink this, I'll become a bugbear. Or it could be polymorphic. It could be maybe even granting your average zero level members of humanity great power, like, beyond first to third level spell capabilities. It might grant them, the ability to touch the ground and cause an earthquake, or summon a meteor swarm from the sky, or a vast insect plague across the population, or something. Like, it might be something almost society changing, but just a short amount of time. And what do you do with that power? Who do you owe? Do you owe your soul? And as was brought up yesterday, we were talking about juicers from Rifts, which is a Palladium game, where you wear a harness that grants you, basically makes you a super soldier, pumped full of chemicals and nanotech and all that kind of stuff, and biotechnology and muscle lacing and everything. And it soups up your adrenaline systems, but you're basically bound to die. And who would make that choice? And playing a character that is going to die from something, what do you do with that short amount of time you have? Like, do you fight to get this off of you, or to not use this thing? Maybe instead of like a 5 minute power, maybe this power that you take, whether it is a small concoction, it's like, yeah, it'll make you powerful, but it also means your death sentence. And people who are willing to die for their cause, no matter what that cause is, makes them exceedingly dangerous and powerful, because it sends a message to the other people in your population that you mean business. It both makes complete enemies and people who are adherents to what you have to say. If you're wishy-washy about your own agenda, then other people are like, well, why should I believe you? But if you're willing to put your life down on the line, others are like, you know what? I want to step up and be like that. I want to be, what is it? If you don't have something to stand for, you'll fall for anything idea. And this may be the physical representation of that. Maybe someone is not able to get this power, unless they are willing to give up their soul to get it. That's the classic demonic sign on the dotted line, demonic charge, right? Like it's the what warlocks are basically generally built around. Like, hey, promise me this, and I'll give you power, but you have to serve me. And this might be on the pathway towards that. And what I like about this is that player characters tend to be, let's be honest, players tend to be pretty arrogant when they're playing their characters, right? It's like, oh, I'm mechanically, I know I'm better than everyone else, and we as player characters are special snowflakes, and there's very few things that your average citizen can do to us. But if you're in a world where you never know who you might piss off, become an enemy, even if it's a perceived rudeness or perceived antithetical resistance to what somebody else wants, player characters might be surrounded by basically time bombs that are about to go off, and they don't know when it'll happen or how it'll happen. It could even work against the player characters, right? Where they're not making enemies, but maybe they're making friends that are like, listen, I don't want to wait to change this, this totalitarian regime. I've got power for a short amount of time. I'm going to go over and kill all the nobles. And the PCs are like, oh, they're face palming, like, no, we don't want you to do that. It's not ready. We have to work together. What happens when you take down the government? We've got to worry about social services and city planning and how we're going to collect taxes and feed people. And of course, they're just consumed with, I just want to kill all the nobles. And you're like, oh, please, we just want to be espionage. But the average citizens might go off on them. Player characters might be surrounded by sycophants and who are like literally taking everything the players say at face value and turning them into their own extreme politics or their own religion. And they're just a bunch of ass-kissing, boot-licking sycophants, and the PCs are like, we got to be careful what we say, because these people might go off and do a thing simply on the fact that we just mentioned a thing offhandedly. A lot of famous people tend to have things like that. Like, what? You didn't respond to the death of Chadwick Boseman in 5 minutes? You're death sentence. It's dumb stuff like that people do. It's like, that boggles the mind, but people do it anyway. And why not put that into our tabletop RPGs? Your DM says, I like the idea that these pills or potions are a deliberate destabilization attempt to try and overthrow a tyrannical system. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, it very well may be planned by a faction that has been trying to rebel against tyranny, and maybe, just maybe, not only have they been using it, but maybe it's gotten out a little bit, like gotten out of hand. And so before the hammer can slap down on them, they're just like, okay, before we get smashed, we need to take over. And somebody in our group is letting our little secret weapon out. We've got to stop them before the nobility knows what we're trying to do. And it could be very complicated even from that point of view. Jarl DM says, never before could the people stand up against the armies of kings, but now with these powers they can. Right, but the problem is, and I love problems. The problem is, if it's for a very short amount of time, you drink a potion or you take a pill or tincture or whatever it is, a stew, a drop under the tongue, or whatever the heck it may be, it could happen. But how do they hold on to that power, right? If you can't hold on to it and you wade out into you're I don't know, a cook, and suddenly you become like a storm giant and you wade through the armies of the enemy, and then in the midst of that you turn back into a cook, you're a dead person, right? And even if not, even if you take care of the army, now what? Like, do you fear that the enemy army will just amass themselves together in sevenfold? Like, oh my God, they've got this great power. Other nations get together. They're like, you know what? We never liked you in the first place, but we sure will work with you to stop these other people that have this power. And then what about like um, ways to infiltrate this group? Through seduction, bribery, intimidation, all kinds of subterfuge using assassination or um, spreading disinformation about to keep other people from from everything from joining the group. Sorry, I read Cameron says, what do you call an elephant that eats its own boogers? A sycophant. Boom. All right, with the dad jokes, really. Oh man. Y'all DM says, ties back in with the juicers. Are you willing to spend your life for 5 devastating minutes against tyranny? Go to Valhalla, all shiny and chrome. Yep. Valhalla. But hey, 1 in a million chance. When you get to see Mad Max Fury Road, that one character got to survive and technically got to go to Valhalla doing a great thing, right? So eh, maybe they're not too wrong. Maybe, sure, from the outside, you go, they're a little cuckoo, like, well, who would do that, right? But for 5 minutes of power, there's a lot people would do. And unfortunately, for 5 minutes of power, a lot of times it's about personal advancement, whatever that advancement might be. You talk to your average person, your friends who aren't into tabletop role playing games, and say, "Hey, if you could do one thing, one extraordinary thing for 5 minutes, what would you do?" And you're like, "Oh, I'd turn invisible and rob a bank. I'd be super strong and throw my boss off of a building or something. I'd be super charismatic and charm all the people that I find attractive," or so. Like, a lot of it would be very self, like uh, raising your own status or wealth or safety, rather than, there will be people who are like, oh, I would solve the world's problems, or I would feed all the hungry, or take down a evil regime or something. There will be people like that. But you'd have to wait. If that happened in our world, you'd have to wade through all the the self-importance and the arrogance, and like you'd have to kind of push your way through all that to get to, it's much like, okay, to bring it into a real world system, right? There's here in the United States, there's like protests going on in Portland, Oregon, right? And it's like in the midst of rioting and civil unrest and violence and destruction, there's people there who are like, excuse me, none of you can hear me because I'm trying to say something reasonable. But unfortunately, on the outside of it, you've got nothing but extremists on both sides. And I think with like 5 minutes of power, I think you're going to pretty much activate all the extremists. For people who are reasonable people like to think about things long and hard. They say to themselves, if I had this power, they would consider the responsibility of it. I think your average person's going to go on pure emotion, and they're not going to think about the responsibility. I think they're just going to be like, listen, this is what I want. I want to take revenge on a person that wronged me. I'm going to get rich. I'm going to prove to everybody else that I'm a badass. It's going to be things like that. It'll be the TikTok, Instagram, era of like individuals that are like, oh, if I do this thing, I'll just become greater and popular, and get a bunch of brownie points from the population because I did a thing. It's all the videos where people are like, well, doing challenges like, we're going to go to the highest building and just stand up at the top and videotape ourselves, or we're going to bite plastic, poisonous plastic cleaning products, and in an attempt to see what happens. I think you're going to have to wade through that, and I think those kind of motivations, while seemingly childlike, I think makes for a great environment for player characters and their missions, because they're always going to be bumping heads against the average citizen. It's like, you know, trying to intimidate them or garner their support or rob them, or you know, PCs are trying to be like, when the player characters are trying to use espionage and some average citizen pops a pill and gains angelic wings and tries to bless their friends and family, and guardians are running around the city with, like, I don't know, displacer beast um displacer beast that can sniff out the chemicals that are used to make these potions or pills or something, and the PCs are like, oh, they just doubled the guards because somebody else did some other thing because of some other thing. I think that would be awesome. Heck, you might even just run down the street and bump somebody in the shoulder by accident. You know, a bunch of pseudo gang members trying to up their rep, and then they pop a pill like, who do you think you are? Anyhow, you know, and then they start going after the PCs, all, what was it from the show, like you know, catching on fire, and their bodies literally on fire as they try to chase them down the street, or, you know, again, they grow wings or transform into a acidic blob, or, you know, I don't know, start growing eyes and mouths off of strange other body orifices off of their skin, or they grow 20 feet tall, or again, turn invisible or mutate some other kind of way. And the PCs are like, all we did is just run through the crowd. What the hell happened? You know, the same goes for like a city of thieves where everyone's like a criminal, and each faction or criminal element might have their own like loyal lieutenants and their own little groups that enforce whatever kind of crime they have. Of course, you know, in their pockets, a bunch of pills. And what a strange or cool kind of concept where the players are like, okay, I could either try to punch this person in the face, or I could try to steal the little pouch off of their hip before they get to pop a pill in their mouth, you know, or, hey, if I run for it, do you think I could, how about we just try to survive long enough to let the duration go out, and once the duration goes out, then I can punch him in the face and take him out without having to like expend a whole lot of energy. Like, that might even be a thing too, where, you know, alternate win scenarios, you know what I mean? So anyway, yeah, unfortunately, time has changed for my job, which is happening before literally daylight saving time comes about here in or the end of daylight saving time. Anyway, what is it? Spring forward, fall back. But anyway, that hasn't happened yet. But unfortunately, my job has changed. So has my my scheduling. So, guys, I want to thank all of you for being part of the show. Well, I'll definitely come up with some way, shape, or form to like modulate this with the shorter time periods and compact in a lot more information. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Unfortunately, yeah, we're going down to half-hour shows. I may consider getting up a half an hour earlier to continue the hour show, but that might even throw people off. But I don't know. You guys give me suggestions as to what you prefer. Do we keep it an hour long, or do we truncate it down to a half hour and make it just smaller and juicy and a little bit more digestible? I don't know. What do you think? Anyway, please drop a comment in. Oh, and by the way, please like, share, subscribe, spread the news of the channel. I really appreciate it. Guys, have a great one. I will see you later. Bye. Thank you very much for watching.